Hey everyone, welcome back to the third session in this Q&A series. Today I'm going to be answering a few frequently asked questions regarding Canada's Food Guide, which was released in January 2019. I briefly reviewed some of the features included in the food guide in the first video in this series, and during today's video I will be going a little further into detail about the guide. I also wanted to mention that the information shared in this video is largely based on a previous webinar that I've presented and a document that was released addressing many of the questions I will be discussing today. If you'd like to check out the list of frequently asked questions, please feel free to contact us for a copy. So just to give you a reference, this is what the food guide snapshot looks like. This is quite different from the previous food guide. You may remember it by all of the food groups displayed on a rainbow. The old food guide was an all-in-one physical document, whereas the new food guide is predominantly an online resource with many details and layers with advice for a variety of situations. The snapshot shown on this slide really only scratches the surface of what our food guide is. You can visit the website shown at the bottom of the snapshot, canada.ca/foodguide, to check out many features included and read more about what we will talk about today. I also wanted to share a few other screenshots of just a few other resources you'll find online, including healthy eating recommendations and even a recipe database. So while you start thinking about your own meal prepping or menu planning for the next few weeks or months following this meal prepping series and are searching for some new healthy recipe ideas, this is a great place to go. Okay, so let's dive into some of these frequently asked questions. So our first question is, does Canada's food guide include serving sizes? So one of the major differences between the previous and our current food guide is that there are now no more serving sizes being featured. Health Canada completed some research to find that many Canadians found that the portions or servings that were previously included were very difficult to apply in daily life. And I can certainly personally relate to this feeling. And for that reason, Health Canada has moved away from a prescriptive approach based on counting and measuring servings. Instead, it recommends a range of nutritious foods that promote health and have provided dietary guidance in a way that is much more realistic for us to follow. The visual guide that you see here on this slide provides a template for healthy eating, which also emphasizes balance, flexibility, and personalization. This is very similar to something called the plate method, which is what many dietitians have been utilizing for years when working with clients. Instead of tallying up servings and trying to do the math at each meal in your head, which, let's face it, none of us were really doing in the first place, it places the focus on how to build a healthy plate. Here we see that half our plate is filled with non-starchy vegetables or fruit, a quarter features some type of protein, whether that's animal or plant-based, and the last quarter features a source of whole grains. Lastly, we also see in the snapshot that water should be our go-to drink of choice. Our next question is, are meat and milk still a part of the food guide? To answer this, yes. So meat and milk are still a part of the new guide. While the food guide puts an emphasis on plant-based foods, it continues to encourage us to choose a variety of nutritious foods, including animal-based protein, which includes dairy and lean meats. And Health Canada's intention behind recommending lower fat dairy and lean meat is not necessarily to reduce the total fat in our diet. Instead, the intent is to help reduce the intake of saturated fat while encouraging foods that contain mostly unsaturated sources. Think of things like fish, olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds, and so on. Many Canadians have been curious about exactly where dairy fits within the new food guide as well. So although dairy is no longer represented by those 2 cups of milk per day as it previously was in the past food guide, this does not mean that dairy or milk is necessarily being excluded. Rather, the reason for this change was to emphasize that water should be our first drink of choice at or in between each meal. We do, however, notice that There's a bowl of yogurt featured in the protein section of the Food Guide snapshot, which represents the dairy category as a whole, which could include milk. I also wanted to note that nutritious foods recommended are not limited to those shown just in the Food Guide snapshot, and these are really just examples or representations of what could be included on a healthy, balanced plate. And there are much more other healthy foods that could also fit within the Food Guide. Can I meet my calcium requirement with the Food Guide? So with all of the confusion surrounding dairy, many people have wondered how they might meet their calcium needs while following the Food Guide. Well, I'm happy to share that many of the recommended foods included in the guide can absolutely help us meet our calcium needs. These are not limited to, but might include regular milk, yogurt, cheese, unsweetened fortified plant-based beverages like a soy milk, fish with bones like canned salmon and sardines, and even tofu. Some other, maybe more surprising sources of calcium include beans, legumes, and dark green vegetables. And if you're curious about whether or not you are currently hitting your calcium requirement or goal, you may want to try the app called Calcium Calculator, and this is a great place to start if you are wondering what this might look like in everyday life. Our next question is, can I meet my vitamin D requirement with the Food Guide? So calcium and vitamin D go hand in hand, since vitamin D actually enhances the absorption of calcium. But believe it or not, vitamin D is found naturally only in very few foods, such as fatty fish. And in fact, vitamin D is mainly found in fortified foods, such as milk and plant-based beverages, which are actually included in the Food Guide. And we also absorb a certain amount of vitamin D through sunlight each day. And for us in Manitoba, this can be quite the challenge to get our daily dose of sun, and the need for supplements is common. So if you are curious about whether or not you might be meeting your vitamin D requirement or if supplementation would be helpful, definitely make sure to talk with your doctor or dietitian. Okay, so our next question is, why is Health Canada recommending that we consume more plant-based proteins? So Health Canada has advised us to consume plant-based protein options more often. And this is because placing an emphasis on plant-based foods can have many positive effects on our health, such as lowering the risk of cardiovascular disease. And survey data has shown that Canadians do not frequently consume plant-based protein, and recommending plant-based protein is a great way to encourage Canadians to consume them more often and therefore reap their health benefits. Consuming more plant-based protein on a regular basis is also a great way to promote environmental sustainability, and we even see some information addressing this in our Food Guide as well. While Health Canada recommends plant-based proteins, animal-based proteins such as fish, shellfish, lean red meat including wild game, and milk, yogurt, kefir, cheeses lower in fat and sodium can still be a part of healthy eating, and incorporating more plant-based protein into your daily routine does not necessarily mean that you need to be a vegan or vegetarian. Okay, so this is a perfect question that fits with this meal prep series. So does the Food Guide include any information about meal planning? So it actually does. Within the Food Guide, we see a section included that breaks down meal planning into 4 easy steps, which I will go through with you here. So step number 1 is decide what to eat. You'll want to write down your meals and snack ideas, and you can get recipe ideas from websites, cookbooks, magazines, friends and family. And then you'll want to start scanning the grocery flyers for healthy foods that might be on sale. And then you'll want to check your fridge, freezer, and cupboards for the foods you already have, and look to see what foods need to be used up before they go to waste. Number 2 is make your grocery list. So write down the foods that you need for your meal plan, and then keep a grocery list handy to write down any items as you run out of them. And organize your grocery list by headings that match the sections of the store. And you'll see that this will really come in handy when you actually do your grocery shopping this will make the process go much, much easier, and you'll be able to find things much quicker, and you might even notice that your grocery trips take less and less time. So number 3 is go shopping. So you'll want to buy the foods on your grocery list that you've prepared and use your list to navigate the aisles that we talked about. That can be a huge help for cutting back some of the time spent in the store. And you'll want to also stick with your list to reduce food waste as much as possible, save money and of course time, and cut down on impulse buying. Number 4 is to start cooking and stick with your plan. So post your meal plan where everyone can see it, and give everyone a job to help with the meal plan as well. So maybe if you have children, you can have them help you in the kitchen with maybe assembling some of the items you need, naming what they are if they're younger kids, or maybe if they're a bit older, having them help you chop up some things, or even just setting the table so that everyone's involved. In addition to these steps, we also see additional resources linked for even more help with meal planning and prep on this page. So to get to this section of the meal planning guide, you'll want to go to tips, and then from the main page, you'll click the meal planning button. And here you will also see sections titled Improving Your Eating Habits, Adjusting Recipes to Meet Your Needs, and Healthy Eating on a Budget. Does Health Canada offer advice for different life stages? Yes, there certainly is advice for a variety of stages, and you can find more specific dietary guidance for a wide variety of life stages and age groups by selecting tips again from the main page, and then scrolling down to the 3rd section, so past those meal planning tips that we just talked about, and go down further down the page to get to all of the different life stages. The last question that I wanted to answer today is it more expensive to eat according to Canada's new food guide in comparison to the previous version? And I truly believe that healthy eating does not have to cost more. It is important to be aware that many of the food options shown in the plate snapshot, as well as other nutritious foods that are available as frozen, dried, or canned, and can absolutely still be healthy options. The current food guide even contains a section on healthy eating on a budget, providing tips on how to reduce your grocery bill while filling your cart with nutritious food choices that are in line with Canada's food guide recommendations. And to answer this question, no, it is not more expensive to eat according to the new food guide in comparison to the previous version. In fact, when we consume more plant-based protein options on a regular basis, you might even find that your grocery bill goes down, especially if you're replacing some of those animal protein sources that you would typically buy with other plant-based options like lentils and beans, which are much more cost-effective. Also, if you remember from our first video, frozen fruits and vegetables can be just as nutritious as fresh, and these are also great options if you are looking to save money while following the food guide. So thank you again for listening to and following along in this Q&A video series. Next week, I will be back and talking about how to stay well through the holiday season. But as always, if you have any other nutrition-related questions, please feel free to email them in to our team, and I will be sure to include them in the final session. Thanks again, and talk to you soon.